Welcome back to the channel. It has been a very long time since we last explored the production of a show, but what better way to make a return than with another childhood favourite making its revival in a big way. This is Toei Animation's Digimon Adventure reboot, and while I know many of you are here for Dragon Ball content, and I know I've deprived you of it for well over a year, stay tuned, because there is a lot of crossover and you may be surprised by the results. Heading this production, the series director is MASATO Mitsuka, one of Toei's finest talents, and you'll be intimately familiar with their work if you remember such super episodes as 110, the debut of Ultra Instinct, and episode 118, the wonderful team-up between Gohan and Piccolo. They of course also contributed to the Broly movie, the breakdown of which will come in time, One Piece Stampede's opening scenes, and they are no stranger to Digimon either, having worked reasonably regularly on the 3 outings of Digimon Cross Wars. As series director, they get the final say in any and all creative decisions, checking over aspects like the storyboard, composite, and more or less every aspect that defines the series in the long term. On an episode-to-episode basis, the quality of the direction will fall on the individual episode directors, but given Mitsuka's directing this debut episode, we'll leave the minutiae of that stuff for another time. Rest assured though, you are in good hands. The storyboard in this initial episode is truly wonderful. From the very get-go, you're greeted by endless layouts with an emphasis on depth and perspective, whether that be through framing rooms at a diagonal to allow the walls to work as lead-in lines, or by simply layering up the frame with various foreground objects. There's a tangible depth to the world, and even when Mitsuka uses a flat plane, it's to convey a sense of scale, whether that be how small the characters are in such a giant world, or when faced against overwhelming odds. Of course, there are also plenty of colourful angles to spice up even the most casual of close-ups. It's also effortless and comes together wonderfully, particularly in tandem with the lighting choices. While the episode's largely just bathed in your typical full bright happy shonen sunshine, there's interesting choices made during some of the darker moments. The train carriage has its windows overexposed to really seal in the set and increase that horrible feeling of claustrophobia, and it almost goes without saying that the directorial highlight comes in the form of the big dramatic shift in tone at the episode's climax. All the saturation is pulled away from the image, and we're left with this smoky, purple-driven atmosphere lit up by the flames of Greymon. As an aside, before we move into the animation side of things, it's pretty interesting to note the line filter the show is using. While One Piece and Dragon Ball Super Broly share identical line processing, Digimon's is not the same, and is actually much more in line with the approach seen on Star Twinkle Procure. While One Piece and Broly use these big, bold lines with intentional defects to emulate that 90s, 80s Cell era, the processing seen on this show seems to be much more about adding subtle, textural quality to the image instead. Given Digimon Adventure was never a cel-animated show, I think that decision makes sense and suits the general vibe, particularly when there's a lot of CG elements around. I don't think mixing and matching the two would have been the best idea, or looked very good at all. Onto the character designs then. This is where things get a little bit unclear, I have to say. The original character designer for Digimon Adventure was KATSUYOSHI NAKATSURU, probably best known as the character designer for the Buu arc of Dragon Ball Z and onwards into GT. This reboot also credits NAKATSURU as its character designer, but it also credits the chief animation supervisor AKIHIRO ASANUMA alongside him. ASANUMA did the designs for Digimon Cross Wars, so I kind of wonder if this is a case of NAKATSURU receiving credit since they're using his legacy designs, and then ASANUMA is essentially here to update them where necessary. That said, NAKATSURU was on the recent Digimon movie, so he's definitely still involved with the franchise, but the extent of which he's involved in this TV series, it remains to be seen, but I'm sure we'll see in the future. Either way, it's ASANUMA who supervises this initial episode, and as expected of the chief supervisor and co-character designer, it all looks pretty one-to-one with the design sheets. It'll be interesting to see just how much the art begins to vary as we start to roll through the various supervisors the show has on offer. The thing is though, with simpler designs, variance is typically not as obvious, so unless we see someone distinctive like Naoki Tate on board for example, it may be a little bit of time before we start to see any differences, and particularly carefully on my part to be able to start picking out and learning the various quirks that each animator has. Thankfully for me, the peak of the visuals in this episode has very little to do with the artwork. This episode moves, it really moves, and that is certainly a stark contrast to the original series that, to call static, would probably be an understatement. But before we do dive into the episode itself, it would be remiss of me not to mention the wonderful work seen in the opening, directed by NOZOMU SHISHIDO, one of the assistant directors on Broly and a regular on 2016's Digimon Universe App Monsters. To be frank, I could probably praise his direction for the opening and especially the ending long enough to make another video entirely, but for the sake of brevity, let's just say it hits every single note right. It is absolutely gorgeous and easily my favourite aspect of this debut, but for now, we'll move on to the animation. From Masashi Yamada, who some of you may know for their work on One Piece Stampede or Dragon Ball Super, we have a little bit of delicate character acting of Taichi playing around with the various Digimon, with an awesome run cycle at the end from someone whose work has unfortunately yet to be identified. It may well be young animator TAKERU SHINOZUKA's work. They really made their mark on One Piece Stampede recently, but they're kind of too fresh for me to have any real grasp of their style yet, I'm afraid. Either way, whoever it is, there's such a great sense of fun to their animation, and it's a neat contrast to the highlight of this opening from YOSHIYAMA, a bombastic, effects-filled rundown of our heroes, and especially Birdramon. Yoshiyama's one of the coolest animators at Toei right now, making their mark on Star Twinkle Procure with the most insane, old-school Kaneda-esque effect shapes. She is so great and her work here is no exception. You could tell me her effects in this Birdramon were ripped right out of Kaneda's original work, and to be honest, I would probably believe you without question. Before her cut is another great scene, this time featuring Agumon transforming, coming from JoJo extraordinaire Nobuhiro Nagata. It's only around 5 seconds long, but it is a flawless rotation sequence, and although a lot of the nice effects are masked by some pretty garish compositing, you can still make out some of the cool shapes, especially during the eye close-up. The last sequence is absolutely great, and although we don't have confirmation about who did it, my guess would be AKIHIRO Ota. From the timing of the ONISHI effects and smears, it reminds me so much of their Stampede work, and I would be very, very shocked if that wasn't the case. So far, we've mentioned a lot of amazing names, and we haven't even begun touching on the actual episode yet, so let's jump right into the action. The first notable scene comes from what appears to be ATSUSHI NIKAIDO. If you've been with this channel long enough, you'll know that name as one of the action superstars on Dragon Ball Super. Their work is snappy, and it tends to be recognizable by their intensely scribbly motion lines. I use this word a lot, but there's a sort of real tangible texture to their line work, and that's always stood out to me a lot more than their actual effects work. Other Dragon Ball Super favourites on this include Hitoshi Inaba, previously misread as Jin Inaba, and also Hirotaka Nii. I must admit I'm not overly familiar with either of their animation. The former was typically corrected and the latter was largely recognisable by their artwork and very occasionally their smoke shapes. There's a few nice action scenes here that may well be their work. They do tend to do action on these kinds of shows, though part of this episode was outsourced to Studio GALLOP, who has talents such as No-Gil Bo, so there's a lot of possibilities that make attributing scenes quite difficult. On the plus side, the absolute highlight of this episode is easily recognizable. It is 2 minutes of absolutely phenomenal work, as we've come to expect from Toei's greatest animator. It is, of course, Ryo Onishi, the man responsible for the gargantuan 5-minute action sequence in Dragon Ball Super Broly, the 8 minutes or so of variety work in One Piece Stampede, and countless other contributions over the years. He really is a superstar, and this work here is no exception. He kicks things off with the transformation of Agumon into Greymon and his first clash with the weird-looking Algomon thing that frankly belongs in Evangelion. You immediately get the sense of weight found in no other animator's work on the episode. In particular, the section where he shakes his head and the transformation finishes is just astounding. I'd have been satisfied enough if that was all he did, yet he comes back later in the episode to deliver another 60 seconds, this time showing off the most insane beam struggle. The effects work is so damn impressive, and the fact it's interspersed with this bouncy character acting from Taichi just blows me away. Honestly, my jaw hit the floor when that final attack happened. There was just so much force behind that impact. ONISHI once again proving to everyone he is the top animator at the studio. It is so rare to see him move away from movies these days, and in fact, this is his first TV appearance since 2017 when he was on Dragon Ball Super. It would be great to see him again. There is some stuff in the preview that looks a little bit like him, so fingers crossed this isn't a one-off. The episode ends with a cheeky little cliffhanger, and that rounds things off. What a first episode that was. The direction, the animation, the music. God, the music is just amazing. I am the #1 fan of the 1999 Hunter x Hunter adaptation, and the music is 100% a part of that, so to have the same composer on board, to be honest, is just icing on the cake next to every other component of this show that so far is excellent. This production is off to such a great start, and frankly, that fits Toei's MO right now. One Piece is thriving, Kitaro just finished an incredibly consistent run, and Dragon Quest production is well underway with many episodes already finished, and that doesn't even air until autumn. It will be so interesting to see whether this series holds up beyond its first few episodes, but at the very least, it's obvious that episode 2 is going to be an absolute banger just like this one. From the preview alone, we can already see several awesome looking scenes, with one specifically coming from fan favourite Naoto Shishida, who will no doubt pull out his usual bag of tricks to deliver a camera shaking, head shaking shocker of a scene. If it's topped by a good director and a solid supervisor, we're in for another treat very soon. That is all for now, and I have to say it is really weird being back on YouTube after such a long time. The past year has certainly been something, to be perfectly honest with you. I considered getting into the final details of it in a separate video at one point, but I kind of feel like it might be best to keep family and private life private. At the very least, I can tell you things have gotten a lot better, and in spite of all of this COVID-19 madness, I'm doing okay. I hope that does extend to everyone watching right now. I know it's a very difficult time for everyone, so I do wish you the best, and if things aren't going so great now, fingers crossed they do start to improve very soon in the future. Those waiting on Dragon Ball videos, please know they will return. I'm very eager to get that Broly breakdown out there, but let's be honest, it's incredibly overwhelming work, so for now, I'm going to do my best to keep chipping away at that, and at the same time, bring you more current content such as this. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought of this first Digimon episode. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you in the next video.